Well, Donald Trump better start reading the filings of his own Solicitor General, John Sauer, and Department of Justice with the United States Supreme Court about the Jeffrey Epstein case. In a filing just made by John Sauer, Donald Trump's own Solicitor General, his former criminal appellate lawyer, they lay out the reason that this isn't boring. They lay out the reason why the Trump administration should immediately stop the cover-up. If he wants to understand why it's not, in his own words, why it's not boring, and he can't understand why people are calling and demanding for the full release of the Epstein files.
Donald Trump called the Epstein case boring and a hoax. But why are his own DOJ filings describing horrifying accounts of underage sex abuse? Is this a cover-up? And why are MAGA supporters and Elon Musk demanding the truth? The contradictions here are staggering. Stay tuned. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
That during an interview on the tarmac somewhere with Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, standing right next to Donald Trump. At the same time, another data point that I wanted to bring up here, not only was Maureen Comey, James Comey, the former FBI director appointed by Donald Trump, just fired by the Trump administration, but that he joked about Epstein, said it was fake news, said it was a hoax, with a laughing Howard Lutnick next to him.
I don't know, this Epstein thing is kind of boring, Trump said, shrugging it off like he was being asked about a bad movie. And he didn't stop there, going so far as to call it a hoax. Yes, the same hoax that involves decades of documented abuse, incriminating photos, endless victim testimonies, and a death that sparked so much controversy that it's still being debated today. But here's what makes this so interesting. While Trump acts like this is all some snooze fest cooked up by the media, his own Department of Justice is telling a very, very different story. Let's break it down. The DOJ's official filings on the Epstein case are anything but boring. These filings lay out allegations that Epstein orchestrated a highly coordinated operation to exploit young girls, ones he reportedly lured in with promises of money, opportunities, or just basic compassion. Many of these victims came from tough backgrounds, runaways, teens in foster care, or those in desperate need of money. Epstein's so-called network was designed to prey on those vulnerabilities. First, he'd isolate the girls, cut them off from any support they might have, and then trap them in a web of psychological and financial dependency. The DOJ's records describe disturbing patterns of abuse, including how Epstein and his associates repeatedly trafficked these girls to his properties across state lines, and sometimes internationally. Still think this is boring, Donnie? And here's where it gets even weirder. Trump's own Solicitor General John Sauer has been unexpectedly vocal in pushing for more transparency on the Epstein files. Yes, Sauer, a Trump administration appointee, is actively advocating for public access to these deeply incriminating documents. So, what gives? If this whole thing is just fake news, as Trump likes to imply, why would his DOJ appointee be leaning into it like this? Either Sauer didn't get the memo to play along, or something much bigger is going on behind closed doors, big enough that Trump's usual dismiss and distract playbook isn't exactly working. Now, let's get personal. While the DOJ actively releases information that paints Epstein's crimes in stark detail, Trump himself has no problem cracking jokes about it. Awkward jokes at that. At a rally, he was seen laughing it up with Howard Lutnick, a name you might not recognize but definitely should. Lutnick, a billionaire businessman, just happens to own the $50 million Manhattan townhouse where Epstein allegedly housed many horrific secrets. This is the same Lutnick who was once Epstein's actual neighbor. Friendly neighborhood coincidence or something darker? Either way, Trump's casual banter with a guy this close to the situation turns the whole thing into a surreal scene. Imagine joking about one of the most shocking criminal conspiracies in modern history while giggling with someone who sits squarely on the periphery of it. It's the kind of moment that makes you say, what? But this isn't just about an offbeat joke or a dismissive remark. The real issue here is the glaring hypocrisy. Trump's efforts to downplay this case stand in sharp opposition to the DOJ's Bombshell findings. What that means is the very institution he led is, intentionally or not, drawing a line in the sand. Their filings don't just contradict Trump's shrug-it-off attitude, they unravel it. Because when the DOJ spells out horrors like Epstein's tactics and network, it becomes a matter of public record, a record that directly clashes with the idea that none of this is a big deal. It's like trying to argue it's just raining when the roof is leaking and there's a raging thunderstorm outside. And look, the weight of these DOJ documents can't be overstated. They're not just court filings, they're pieces of evidence, official testimony, and factual accounts that outlive tweet storms and one-liners. Trump can call it what he wants, but the DOJ is turning this into something he can't sweep under a gold-plated rug. The fact that it's happening under the umbrella of his own administration adds an extra layer of irony, or maybe karma. Either way, these filings are more than just details in the Epstein saga. They're glaring red flags that someone at the DOJ wants the world to notice, and that someone might even be Trump's own people. So here's the big question. Why? Why would the DOJ, under Trump's leadership, take a stance that actively exposes Epstein's network despite Trump's repeated efforts to downplay its significance? Could it be an internal revolt, a bureaucratic misstep, or maybe just someone doing the right thing for once? And more importantly, why is Trump so unwilling to lean into transparency on this issue? His behavior isn't just dismissive, it's evasive. Does he know something we don't? Or does he know something we do and just wants to avoid admitting? If the DOJ filings alone weren't enough, Trump's own involvement with figures like Lutnick raises deeply uncomfortable questions about how much he really knew and how long he's been trying to keep it quiet. Make no mistake, the DOJ's approach here is deliberate, and it's a loud public contradiction of Trump's attempt to laugh this issue off. But as they say, the truth always finds a way to come out. So with players like John Sauer pushing the issue from one side and Trump running interference on the other, the pressure is building from all directions, and it's far from over. Even Trump's loudest MAGA supporters are starting to sound like conspiracy theorists, but not about the deep state or voter fraud this time. No, this time they're asking the hard questions about Jeffrey Epstein and his long list of shady connections. And guess what? Donald Trump doesn't have an answer. The irony is thicker than Trump's hairspray, because while he's busy dismissing the Epstein case as boring, his own fans aren't buying it. Figures like Laura Loomer, Tucker Carlson, and even House Speaker Mike Johnson are now calling for transparency, and they're not being quiet about it either. These are people who used to treat Trump's every word like gospel, and yet here they are, demanding access to Epstein's files, even if it means turning some heat back onto Trump himself. Awkward, right? And if that weren't strange enough, here comes Elon Musk, jumping into the mix. That's right, the self-proclaimed techno-king of Tesla and Twitter isn't scrolling past this story. Musk has publicly voiced his support for releasing Epstein's files. You know, the same Musk that Trump has praised as a genius and a winner. So on one side, you've got Trump's base and MAGA influencers lifting the hood to dig into the Epstein engine, and on the other side, you've got Trump acting like the whole thing's just a flat tire. That uncomfortable juxtaposition is making headlines for all the wrong reasons. Let's break this coalition down, though, because it's fascinating. Laura Loomer, a die-hard Trumpet who practically made a career throwing herself in Trump's corner, is now using her platform to go after the DOJ, the FBI, and even Trump himself. She's hammering public agencies for withholding documents and demanding answers about who was in Epstein's inner circle. Tucker Carlson, who's never been shy about projecting his opinions, even the unhinged ones, is now also applying pressure, placing Epstein's murky connections and the hidden client list in the spotlight. When you've got people like this on your tail, it's no small thing. Add to that the Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, joining the chorus, along with some bipartisan rumblings in the Senate, and it's clear that there's a growing crack in the narrative Trump's been crafting. But here's where things get sticky. Trump's not just staying quiet on this issue, he's actively downplaying it. He's made it clear to anyone who'll listen that this is a hoax. According to Trump, his loyal supporters are wasting their breath. He's reportedly gone as far as telling them they're being duped by the media and calling it boring in his usual dismissive one-liner way. That strategy might have worked for him in the past, but it's clearly not flying this time. Instead of falling in line, his supporters are doubling down, and even those closest to him are beginning to look at this case like it's one of those smoke means fire scenarios. Now, let's not ignore the elephant in the room, or should I say orange. There's a growing theory floating around that Trump's dismissive attitude might actually be a calculated move. Some believe he's brushing this off because of possible connections to Epstein that he'd rather not be unearthed. Others go a step further and speculate that he could even be considering a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime accomplice. Think about it. This wouldn't be the first time Trump used his pardon power in a way that raised eyebrows. After all, he pardoned allies and January 6th insurrectionists without batting an eye, so the idea of sparing Maxwell doesn't feel entirely out of left field. And if that rumor turns out to be true, it's not hard to envision the fallout it would cause. His base is already unsteady on this issue, with many MAGA influencers and allies openly bucking Trump's position. A Maxwell pardon would only deepen the cracks in that wall of support. It would raise endless questions about why Trump would bother shielding someone like her and what he might be hiding. Then there's Musk. His involvement takes this story to a new level of visibility. Musk isn't exactly popular with left-leaning circles, but his pull with conservatives, libertarians, and tech enthusiasts makes him a wild card. When Musk talks, people listen, or at least the internet echo chamber does. His call for transparency on Epstein's files comes across as a direct challenge to Trump's attempt to sideline this case. For someone like Musk, who thrives on disruption and transparency narratives, this almost feels like an attempt to occupy the moral high ground. That's a place Trump used to claim on issues like corruption, but now finds himself oddly uncomfortable standing on. The effect of all this? It's pulling apart the seams of Trump's carefully manufactured image as the straight-talking outsider who doesn't hide inconvenient truths. If even his most die-hard fans and high-profile allies like Musk aren't buying what he's selling, how much longer can he keep trying to sweep this under the proverbial rug? It's one thing to dismiss left-wing critics. Trump does that all day. But when the calls for accountability are coming from inside the House, it's a whole new ballgame. The stakes here are massive. This is no longer about political affiliations or loyalty tests. It's about whether the full truth about Epstein's network ever sees the light of day. And if Trump really is trying to bury this, the question isn't if the truth will come out, but when. The coalition pushing for those files is growing louder by the day, and Trump's usual strategy of waving off criticism like it's fake news isn't holding up. Even in MAGA circles, the truth seems to be taking on a life of its own. Even Trump's own DOJ isn't backing his hoax claims about Epstein. Add to that his MAGA base and even Elon Musk demanding the files be released, and it's clear this story won't stay buried. No matter how much Trump tries to ignore it, Musk himself said, must release those files, proving this isn't just a partisan issue. Here's the thing, the public has a right to know the truth. So, stay informed, question everything, support independent journalism, and push for transparency. Because no matter how much grumpy Trumpy spins it, this orange turd won't stay hidden forever. TikTok, Donnie.